Hello, world and universe. Welcome to the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that like and subscribe button. And for all my continued followers, I want to say thank you. And this is an opinion-based video channel where I try to open your eyes and ears up to some of the travails and tribulations that take place throughout our cities, our states, our country, and sometimes around the world. This story I have for you is coming straight out of St. Louis, where in the 1950s and 60s, the Army sprayed chemicals around the Pruitt-Igoe housing development as part of a secret Cold War era testing. Chester Deans and Ben Phillips lived in the development and said that the chemicals, which the Army maintains were non-toxic, have made people sick, causing illnesses like autoimmune diseases, ataxia, and even cancer. So there's a big controversy over this testing in the 1950s and 60s in this area that was well known in St. Louis called Pruitt-Igoe. So this is how the story goes. Former residents of a low-income, majority black housing development in St. Louis, Missouri are seeking restitution from the U.S. Army over a Cold War era testing program they say made them ill. Ben Phillips was 5 years old when he moved with his family into the Pruitt-Igoe housing development, a predominantly black and low-income housing complex located northwest of downtown St. Louis. Phillips, now 73, told CNN he had fond memories of his decades spent growing up in the high-rise. There were two separate developments. Igoe was for whites and Pruitt was for blacks. He said, adding, despite the segregation, it was a wonderful, tranquil area and a brand new high-rise. But Phillips said he also recalls chemical mist being sprayed from vehicles and from rooftops of several buildings in the housing development. At the time, he said residents thought the mist was just a pesticide. The majority of it was done at night. So, you're at home, it's a summer evening, you got your windows open up on the 7th floor because you don't have air conditioning, and all of this spray is spewing this stuff off the roofs. Phillips said as he got older, Phillips' perception of what he inhaled as a child changed. And so the Army had this dispersion test. And so what happened here is throughout the nuclear arms race of the 1950s and 60s, the U.S. military feared an enemy attack using biological warfare, according to an online government records. To prepare, according to the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, the U.S. Army conducted experiments in 33 cities and across the country, including St. Louis, to test how an aerosol biological agent might spread in different environments. Government records show the Army sprayed zinc cadmium sulfide. Remember those words, zinc cadmium sulfide in these dispersion tests, which is an inorganic compound composed of zinc, cadmium, and sulfur that glows bright yellow under ultraviolet light. At the time, the NIH said the compound was thought to be harmless to humans, animals, and plants. Today, the Army still maintains the substance used was non-toxic. So here's where the controversy comes in. In a statement to CNN, Army spokesperson Ellen Lovett said 5 examinations of the Army's use of zinc cadmium sulfide in their aerosol dispersion tests have all shown the mist was non-toxic. That's what the government was saying. None of the reports contained evidence of a radioactive component to the zinc cadmium sulfide dispersion test, Lovett said in a statement. But for Phillips, the military's assurances were not enough. In the decades since the testing, Phillips said many family and friends who were exposed to the mist have developed unexplained illnesses, including forms of cancer. He said, I just feel there was a cover-up, he said. In 2013, Phillips filed a lawsuit seeking restitution for those impacted in the Army's dispersion program. A federal judge later dismissed the suit on the grounds that the Army and its contractors were indemnified by the government. Indemnified means that you cannot, this class action lawsuit, these individuals, these tax-paying U.S. citizens who were used as test dummies, could not sue the U.S. government. That is legal language that's on the books where the government can abstain from responsibility for these tests that they did on these innocent people, even these biological spray tests that were causing autoimmune diseases, cancer, ataxia, etc. Phillips told CNN the judge's ruling felt like the door was just shut, slammed in our face for former residents who saw the lawsuit as a means to obtain justice. In response, Phillips and several other former residents formed the nonprofit organization called Pruitt-Igoe Historical Accounting, Compensation, and Truth Seeking. The acronym is PHACTS, PHACTS. I'm going to say it again. These people from Pruitt-Igoe developed this nonprofit organization called Pruitt-Igoe Historical Accounting, Compensation, and Truth Seeking. The acronym PHACTS, PHACTS. He said the organization is fighting to add former Pruitt-Igoe residents to a list of neighborhoods being considered for compensation by the federal government because of separate radiological testing done in St. Louis in the 50s and 60s. The people of St. Louis have borne the burden of the Manhattan Project, and now it's time for their government to make it right. This is a statement by Senator Josh Hawley, who said this in a press release announcing this legislation back in July. So even Republican Senator Josh Hawley has gotten on the bandwagon to see if they can have some restitution for these innocent individuals who were used as test dummies with this biological spray that they sprayed in the Pruitt-Igoe neighborhoods back in the 50s and 60s. So at least Senator Josh Hawley, is putting some sunshine on this issue. The federal government needs to pay the medical bills for any St. Louis resident who has contracted cancer or any autoimmune virus or genetic disorder because of the exposure to this radioactive contamination, Josh Hawley said. So what's behind the fog? Lisa Martino-Taylor, a recently retired sociology professor at Southern Illinois University, has studied the Army's program for decades. After filing multiple requests under the Freedom of Information Act, Martino-Taylor said she spent years looking at declassified documents about the dispersion program and detailed her findings in a book called Beyond the Fog. You should look that book up. Her research uncovered Army maps that placed Pruitt-Igoe within the Army's testing areas. She told CNN she believes the stories told by former residents of Pruitt-Igoe that the mist they inhaled made them sick. They were developing this stuff as a weapon and they knew it could harm people, she said. The NIH, National Institutes of Health, recommends further testing to determine the toxicity of zinc cadmium sulfide, but classifies cadmium sulfide as a hazardous substance. The NIH classified cadmium sulfide as a hazardous substance that may cause cancer and damage to internal organs as a result of prolonged or repeated exposure. According to the NIH, chronic exposure to zinc sulfide can cause anemia, lethargy, a decrease in good cholesterol, damage to the pancreatic and reproductive systems. It can also cause ataxia, an illness where people lose control of their muscles in their arms and legs. This is according to Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. Phillips said his family has experienced similar side effects. He said, I had a little sister who was having convulsions when she was about a year and a half old. He said it went on for about 2.5 years and then it automatically stopped. Phillips told CNN he believes his sister's illnesses is connected to the testing because the convulsions ended once the family moved out of Pruitt-Igoe. This seems like obvious evidence of experimentation, biological sprays that definitely could cause cancer, which are cancer-causing agents. And the government wants to turn a blind eye because these were low-income people of color. Other residents from Pruitt-Igoe told their stories to filmmaker Damian Smith for his documentary Target St. Louis Volume 1. You should check that out. Smith told CNN he heard some of the most shocking claims about Pruitt-Igoe from his grandmother, who lived in St. Louis. He said, I started doing more research about it, and it infuriated him that they can test on a population that they deem to be basically subhuman. How many times have we heard about that with the United States doing segregation, Jim Crow era, where blacks were considered subhuman? He said this definitely stripped them of any constitutional rights. Smith told CNN after talking with former residents for his documentary, the most common illness they cited was cancer, the big C word. Pruitt-Igoe was demolished in 1972, and the site has remained vacant. And now they're building an NGA, Neospace, $11 billion NGA, National Neo Space government agency on that area as we speak at Cass and Jefferson. That's going up as we speak, an $11 billion defense site. For Phillips, and that's kind of ironic now, for Phillips, restitution is not just about giving money to individuals. He said it's also about making sure Americans are educated and aware of the harms of the past. He said this happens so often to marginalized communities, African American communities, because they're easier to prey upon, because at least back then, blacks hardly had a voice. How many times have we heard this story before? But as I said, Pruitt-Igoe got demolished in 1972, and ironically, where they presented these biological chemical sprays, and now in 2024, 25, 26, they are building an $11 billion NGA, National Geospace program, right there at that same area. Life comes full circle. These people need compensation, and let's shed some light on these victims in St. Louis. This has been the Trevor Donald Experience.